Hello YouTube, Mike Kohanam here. We finally got an update to the Forbidden and Limited list as well as some skill changes for Yu-Gi-Oh! Speed Duels and Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links. So I'm going to go through them and talk about how I think they'll affect the metagame. If you like discussion videos like these, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it. So the first change on the list is this cute card Puzzleomino, the drop-in deleter, which is added to the limited one list. This is kind of a weird change that I certainly wasn't expecting, but players have been using Puzzleomino to more easily summon Bishbalkin, Phantasmal Lord, Ultimiddle Bishbalkin. And by summoning Bishbalkin, you can use its effect to flood the field with tokens. You fill up your opponent's monster zones with tokens, kind of like Ograma Trio does. And then if the opponent doesn't have cards that can get rid of them, then they can't summon any monsters, and they pretty quickly just lose the game. So putting Puzzleomino to one, where it joins Bishbalkin on the limited one list, means you can't use the two cards together, so it's a lot harder to perform this combo. I'm sure there are other ways to summon Bishbalkin and try to OTK your opponent after clogging their field, but this is definitely the easiest one that players have been using, so I don't think Bishbalkin is going to see the level of play that it has been seeing. Not that it was rampant in PvP dueling, but it was definitely annoying enough that players didn't want to face it, especially with how easily it was summoned in decks using Puzzleomino and the Fleur engine. Next up, we have Beatrice to 1. I honestly don't know what that's doing on the limited 1 list. I think some zombie decks used it. Not that zombies were, particularly dominant, so I don't know what to make of that. Invoked Cocytus came off of the Forbidden list and was moved to limited 1. So that's a nice boost for people who like normal summoning Alistair the Invoker and playing Invocation. It definitely doesn't have the level of power it did in the old days of Duel Links. We have so many ways to get rid of monsters now. But it is an annoying card that can't be targeted or destroyed by the opponent's card effects and can attack from defense position where it has 2,900 defense points. But 2,900 is not that hard to overcome anyway in modern Duel Links, even with Alistair able to boost its stats. I don't see it being particularly difficult to stop. Book of Eclipse can turn it face down where it's then vulnerable to be destroyed. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if this has very little impact on PvP dueling unless we get more invoked support released in the game. Star Seraph Scepter on the limited 3 list I think is the biggest change. Unsurprisingly, Star Seraph has been one of the strongest decks in PvP dueling. I think that every single duelist at the World Championship used a Star Seraph deck. It was definitely the deck to beat, or at least one of the decks to beat. And Star Seraph Scepter on the limited 3 list doesn't hit the core of the deck, since there are no other in-theme limited 3 cards, but it does force the deck to lose access to stuff like Book of Eclipse, Crackdown, and Compulsory Evacuation Device, other powerful limited 3 cards, because I don't think you're going to cut back on your number of Star Seraph Scepters in the deck. I think that with Book of Eclipse added to the deck, it became insanely strong, and definitely stronger than it's ever been. And now Star Seraph Scepter very quickly being added to the limited 3 list really pulls back on that, because now you can't use the Book of Eclipse that you were using before, or any of the other limited 3 cards that you may have been using before Book of Eclipse was released. So I think this is a pretty big change. I don't think it alone destroys the deck, but I definitely think it knocks it down, and it's probably not the deck to beat as it once was. Next up, we have some Dark Lord cards. Dark Lord Contact and the Sanctified Dark Lord, both on the limited 3 list, which means you still can't play 3 copies of each. You can only use 3 cards from the limited 3 pool of cards. Dark Lords have done literally nothing recently. It was a top meta deck in the ancient days of Duel Links that have been power crept into nothing. So I'm very surprised they're even on the limited 3 list. In that they could probably be removed from the list entirely, and the deck probably still wouldn't do much. So I don't think this is going to have too much impact. Ghost Trick Scare, it says, we are limiting this card as it will lead the pace of duels to become becoming sluggish as more cards related to this card are introduced to the game. Reading the card, I have no idea why it would be added to the limited list at all, but it seems to promise some more relevant cards. I guess Ghost Trick support will be added to the game that may impact the utility of Ghost Trick Scare. So I don't know what to think of this yet, but I guess I'll keep an open mind when I see more cards released that interact with Ghost Trick Scare. But in terms of the current competitive metagame, I think the limited 3 Star Seraph Scepter is the only change on the limited 3 list that actually has an impact and will have an impact. There are no limited 2 changes this time, so we'll just jump off of the cards that are being removed from the list entirely. I love to see this. I love to see a little more flexibility all around for deck building, so I like when cards get removed from the limited 3 list. And there are some strong cards on here. Personal Spoofing is an insane card for Altergeist decks. Altergeist decks haven't been doing much, but I do think that it being removed from the list is a huge boost, so we'll see if it makes a big difference. The Altergeist Overwrite skill is really good. Maybe Altergeist, maybe there's a future for Altergeist with this no longer on the list. Dragon Pit Magician is, again, it's a good card. Pendulums haven't been doing anything in Duel Links, so maybe that plus Pendulum Call, which you can also see here, is now removed from the Forbidden Limited list. Maybe that'll be a big boon for the deck. Gaga Revenge. Gaga decks haven't been competitive in a long time. They once were the best deck, I think, by far at the time that they reigned. But I think that deck at full power under the current metagame, where the current skill level is at, I think would be just stomped by the current meta decks. So I think Gaga Revenge to 3 is cool if you like playing Onomots, but I don't think it'll have a massive impact on competitive play. Pacifist, the Phantasm City. Honestly, I didn't even look at what the cards in this theme do because I read like a couple of them and saw that this was on the limited 3 list when on release and that it could not possibly be competitive. Now it's removed from the limited 3 list, so I don't know. I mean, obviously it made a completely uncompetitive deck better, so maybe it being removed from the list will have some sort of impact. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Phantom Knights of Torn Scales. Again, Phantom Knight was a deck that reigned for a while, but it's, I think, been power crept by the current decks. Even with this being unlimited, I don't think the Phantom Knights are just going to suddenly be the best deck, but I think they are going to be a lot better, and it is possible that they will be able to compete because you did see it come up every so often in PvP duels, and it's kind of impressive what they can still do. Shiranui Spirit Master. Again, Shiranui was another deck that reigned as the top deck for a while, so they're getting some power back, the Spirit Master being off the list. World Legacy's Memory. I really like Mech Knights. I'm happy to see this card removed from the list. Mech Knights are still powerful in terms of their effects and their power. So maybe it could have some sort of impact, but again, that was a top deck from ages ago, and the state of the game right now is where the decks are just so much stronger in the current state of the game. So could have an impact. It's a theme I really like, so I'm really happy to see it be removed from the Forbidden and Limited list. Transmodify was a card that was used sometimes in Infernities. Infernities were okay at one point in time. I don't think this being removed from the list is going to actually affect their viability, but we'll see. Those are all of the Forbidden and Limited list changes. It's kind of a short list. I think more cards were released than actually limited. And it's kind of a strange list because it doesn't really hit the top decks. It just gives more power to weaker decks to compete with the top decks. The main hit to the top decks are really just the Star Seraph Scepter being added to the limited 3 list, which is quite a big blow to Star Seraph decks. And then Puzzleomino for anyone who is using the combo with Bish Balkan. That's, you know, it's a hit where you can't cheese a win, but I don't think it's going to overturn the metagame. Moving on to the simultaneously announced skill changes. Bane of Darkness was improved for any Buster Blader fans. You're now able to summon more monsters than you were before, even while you were using the skill. Basically, they relaxed the drawback. I don't think it's going to make it competitive, but it's nice to see. Tuning in the Sky was massacred on the last nerf to the skill. That's the Agent skill that uses for the decks using Master Hyperion. They gave it the tiniest bit of power back. You can before. So first of all, before your extra deck couldn't contain any monsters with the same name. That's no longer a requirement. I don't think that actually matters. I don't know how many monsters you in your extra deck you want to double up or triple up on. The more significant improvement to the skill is that they kind of took away the best part of the skill previously and now have given it back. Previously, so in its original form, you could send back a Hyperion monster or Mystical Shine Ball from your hand back to the deck, and then add a Hyperion monster or an Agent of Creation Venus from your deck to your hand. They took away the ability to send Mystical Shine Ball from your hand to the deck in order to use the skill, which means Mystical Shine Ball became a brick. If you drew it, all you could do with it is special summon it with the effect of Venus, basically. If you were to normal summon Venus or summon Venus off of one of your other monster's effects. So they made the curse of drawing Mystical Shine Ball much more painful by removing that from the skill. Now they gave it back. So they added a little bit of consistency back to the Tuning in the Sky skill, but it still doesn't add Sanctuary in the Sky to the deck when you use the skill, which was a major part of what made the Tuning in the Sky skill so strong to begin with, because you wouldn't hard draw the Sanctuary in the Sky. So again, it was a consistency hit when they took that away. And even with the skill, I think even with the skill back to where it was originally, the Forbidden and Limited list hits that this deck took right after the Worlds qualifier were, I think, so brutal. Even the skill in its full original form probably would not have been the powerhouse that it was back then, and probably could not even compete with the top decks today. So I don't know. The skill has gotten a lot better, but with the Forbidden Limited list hits that they've recently suffered, I think letting you send Mystical Shine Ball back from your hand to the deck to get a relevant Hyperion or Agent monster just is not enough. Clear Wing Acceleration got a slight boost. During your main phase now, you can send a Synchro or a Speedroid Tuner from your deck or field to the graveyard. It used to only be able to send Speedroid Red Eye dice, not any tuner. So I don't really know if that's significant, but I guess it can improve the consistency of the deck if you draw cards that interact with having different tuners in your graveyard that you'd rather have there than the Red Eye dice. But I think it's a small change that's a welcome boost to a deck that's really not doing much competitively. Next up, there are some changes to a bunch of the exchange skills. There's Spellcasters Exchange, Zombies Exchange, and Fiends Exchange. They all basically do the same thing, where twice per duel they let you place a level 5 or higher monster of that type from your hand on the bottom of deck and draw a card. Previously, it can only be used at the start of your main phase. Now you can use it at any point in your turn, twice per duel. I mean, it's a nice consistency boost to a deck, but obviously nowhere near the power level of certain other skills we have in Duel Links right now. The only one of these skills that I've really seen people use are, I think I may have seen Zombies Exchange use, but mostly Fiends Exchange, which players have been using with Unchained to send the high-level monsters back to the deck, draw a new card, and then they're able to special those high-level monsters from the deck with the effects of the Unchained monsters. And there was an Unchained deck in the finals of the World Championship, so this boost to Fiends Exchange will actually make Unchained better. So that's cool to see. Finally, the last change is to the Barian Battlemorph, the Barian's White Shield. So this is the Star Seraph skill that is so powerful it has dominated the game. It was definitely one of the top decks at the recent World Championship, and for good reason, largely because of this skill. Now, the limit on Star Seraph Scepter, placing on the limited 3 list, definitely weakens the deck significantly. The new limitation on the skill, on the other hand, is just really the slightest diminishment of its power. The strongest part of the skill is that you can set a Star Seraph monster from your hand to set a Star Seraph monster from your deck once per turn. So it's a free monster from your deck every single turn, just with that part of the skill. As the game goes on, you get more value out of it because you get to summon more monsters from your deck for free, or set more monsters from your deck for free using that part of the skill. That's remained unchanged, actually. They didn't touch that at all. The only thing they changed is the third part of the skill, which was a once per turn effect and is now a once per duel effect. So this is the part of the skill that lets you send a monster from your field to the graveyard. Any monster. It can even be like an effect veiler you set face down, or a monster you took control of with mind control or something. Not that you'll probably be playing it with Scepter at 3 on the limited 3 list. And it let you swap that for a Star Seraph from your deck so that you're able to get the Scepter, for example, so that you can do a 3 material Xyz and then use its effect to destroy a card, draw a card. But it also added a rank up magic variance force from outside of your deck to your hand. Typically, there's only players use one line of Xyz monsters. They'll play like one rank 4 light warrior that they can rank up into Ultimate Leo. So you really don't need a second copy of rank up magic variance force. So only being able to use this part of the skill once per duel really has no impact on that. The only slight impact it has is that you're no longer getting that free rank up magic variance force to discard with Forbidding Droplet. So I guess that's kind of a nerf. And I guess you have one less way to send monsters from your field to the graveyard each turn if you're playing Pot of Avarice. And you can't get Scepter from your deck that way every single turn, but you can still get Scepter from your deck with the second part of the skill. So I don't know. I'm kind of confused by the change because seems pretty close to meaningless. It is definitely a nerf because you can no longer just get that. You get the one free card from your deck with the second part of the skill every turn. You can no longer get an extra free card from outside of the game with the third part of the skill every turn. But you can still do it once, and the card that you're getting, you're typically only going to activate once in a duel. So, I mean, how much this skill's power was weakened just seems almost negligible. Scepter on the limited 3 list, however, was a pretty big hit to the deck, I think. Personally, I hate playing decks with limited 3 cards in theme. I just love the power cards like Ice Dragon's Prison, Crackdown, Compulsory Evacuation Device, and now Book of Eclipse. So I think just the limitation on that might dissuade me from using Star Seraph when there are also so many other powerful decks in Duel Links, but I don't think the change to the skill is really impacting my decision. So that's it for the changes. It's a little surprising Boral Link was not hit at all because that's been a top deck for a while now. Although, admittedly, the Boral Link deck did not perform as well as other decks like Star Seraph at the World Championship, so maybe its power is overestimated by the player base. I don't really know. I know most people consider it a top deck. I consider it a top deck. So it's kind of weird to see no adjustments made to the deck. Lyrilusk is unaffected, but that just came out. Its power is still kind of getting gauged. But those appear to be top contenders in the metagame, alongside Star Seraph, whose position may adjust as a result of the latest changes. So not tremendous hits to top meta decks this time around, but Duel Links that's definitely, the changes are definitely movement in the right direction. And one thing I love about Duel Links is that the Forbidden Unlimited list and skill adjustments happen pretty frequently, so the meta really does not get stale. So I'm looking forward to what happens with these changes and how the metagame develops. Let me know what you think of these changes and whether it was enough or too harsh on Star Seraph, and whether you think that other changes needed to have been made.